On the front cover of the Deal this morning, the headline is, Enter Obama, is this the world's crappiest job? I don't know about crappy, but certainly is a very challenging environment with, basically a new sheriff in town.
It sure was expensive.
Yeah. What's expensive?
Time-consuming.
Yeah. What are we going to see regarding, out of Congress and the White House regarding stimulus? And to all of you, what do you think is going to happen with respect to capital gains and private equity, the carried interest, or taxes in general?
I think the interesting thing is based on what we've read and the people we've talked to, he doesn't really have many options right now. In the current economy, I don't think anybody would recommend raising taxes. Even in the higher income brackets or on corporations. I think that's going to be a very difficult thing to force through in the current economy. And they can't cut spending. In fact, they're talking about big stimulus packages to try to get the economy going. So I think in the first, whatever you want to call it, 12, 24, 36 months of his administration, they're going to have to be trying to stimulate the economy and get us back on track. I think the interesting challenge for President Obama or President-elect Obama after that is trying to deliver on the promises he made to folks and at the same time trying to reduce the deficit. There's when you talk to folks, economists, what they say, hey, listen, there's a real fear of deflation in the United States right now. So that's obviously what the stimulus plan is going to go to try to address. They're flooding the economy with capital. Most economists will tell you that once you flood your economy with capital, the inevitable inflation kicks in at some point when the economy starts going back up. And what I think a lot of economists are telling the administration is, well, then that's when you start to pull capital back out of the economy. You raise interest rates, you bring back a lot of the capital you put into these banks. And I have not seen in my lifetime the government's fortitude to do that. And so what we think is going to happen is that the taxes aren't going to be cut, taxes aren't going to be raised for a while. We'll get to 2-3 years into it, and then our big fear is going to be rampant inflation, and we're not sure. I think the current administration has a wonderful chance to really position the company well because everybody's rooting for the new administration. I just hope that we don't get back to political infighting that we've been afflicted with the last. You could argue the last 20 years. On just the taxes, the private equity tax is an interesting thing. I mean, it's a lot smaller than it was 2 years ago. So I think people are, I think our industry's done a disservice on arguing our side of it, which is really, it's about partnership law. It's, it affects every partnership, whether it's real estate partnerships, private equity partnerships, and that's what we really should be arguing. And the other thing is the government should think about what is the incentive they want to build in. Do they want long-term capital? Well, then, lower the tax rate the longer you hold your investment, which I think a lot of folks in our industry would be in favor of because that obviously would restrict the hedge funds from getting into our business or make it a lot tougher. And it would accomplish what the government wants. Just the last thing to mention that I think the other big problem right now that I think the new administration has to address is what you've heard, which is all this capital is flowing into the industry, into the banking industry. And if you talk to bankers, I have a good friend who's a senior, who runs capital markets, one of the big banks, and he said, listen, the problem is I'm getting all this capital, and I can go buy senior notes or senior loans at 16, 17% that look like pretty good loans, or I can lend you money at 9 or 8. Why would I ever do that? And so they have to figure out some way to stimulate new lending. And one way is to change the tax rate on new loans versus old loans, or just to try to equate the after-tax yield so that the financial institutions have an incentive to put new loans on the book versus just buying old loans and letting them age in place.